I want to be clear. I don't think we're guilty of Monday morning quarterbacking. I was Saturday afternoon quarterbacking.
Yeah,
I
you
said,
really
have a mini Shark Tank-like primary with the best 8 candidates, go from 2 debates with 8, then to 4, then to 2. It would have dominated the media cycle.
Yep.
And by the way, Trump was dominating it because they were afraid to let Joe out of the basement.
Right.
Democrats would have dominated it. And who knows, maybe it would have been Vice President Harris that would have matured. I don't think she would have.
She needed more time.
Well, the bottom line is, we don't want to acknowledge this. She's not a great candidate. I think she did a good job given the hand she was dealt with, but this is a candidate who didn't make it to Iowa 4 years earlier, which says to me, America didn't think of her as a great candidate.
Yeah, I thought she did a lot better. The first 60 days I thought were terrific. I thought.
Look, I think given the hand she was dealt, Vice President Harris, first off, I think one of the great performances in political history was her debate. I think the amount of pressure that she must have felt, and for her to show up and be that composed, that articulate, that deft, practicing with 2 screens, I thought that was one of the great performances in political history. The reality is she was not a strong candidate, and President Biden and his family's narcissism have severely fucked this country, severely. And that is his legacy. And we want to have, and we'll get shit for this because people are correctly feeling empathy for him. But his legacy, in my view, has been ruined by this.
Can I bring that up? Because I got to tell you, it continues. We were pretty outspoken, you first, and then you convinced me of his need to step down at the time. And we got so much endless shit. You remember how much endless shit we got. It's driving me nuts. I have blocked so many people on all the social networks because they just can't, they do have a derangement syndrome. I was like, you can't say to yourself what a fuck up this was because it's not the point. I think we should move on, by the way. I think we've got to move on quickly, and there's lots of ways to do that. We made a mistake. We needed to do this. We're going to do things differently. We're so sorry. Please trust us again. And here's how you can trust us by doing, as you said, a robust primary, correct? Here's some answers from us. Here's what we're going to do. This guy, and also saying out loud, Joe Biden betrayed us, right? Just say it. Sorry, he's sick, but this is the way it is. He's done that.
Boy. So we got to talk about Kamala Harris. Now facing some backlash over questions about whether or not she knew Joe Biden was mentally declining, because everybody now, all Democrats are now being confronted about some of the bombshell allegations in this book that was written by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson in order to make some money off of Joe Biden, to stab the Democrat Party in the back, even though they both participated in the cover-up as well too. But here we have, again, Kamala Harris now facing questions because she is one of these people that told the American people that, hey, Joe Biden is great, right? Joe Biden is excellent. In fact, if you happen to criticize Joe Biden and his mental fitness, then you're acting in a way that is gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. This is what she said about Robert Hur, okay, who came out and expressed concerns about Joe Biden after the DOJ interviews. And I can't believe that Kamala still has this up on her X, but she has it up on her page.
As a former prosecutor, the comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated, gratuitous. And so I will say that when it comes to the role and responsibility of a prosecutor in a situation like that, we should expect that there would be a higher level of integrity than what we saw.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, fast forward over a year later, we now know it was Kamala Harris who was lacking integrity, okay? And this rabbit hole gets even deeper because Kamala Harris didn't just smear Robert Hur for calling out Joe Biden, but apparently she also smeared CNN as well too, right? Anderson Cooper, who pressed Kamala Harris after Joe Biden's debate about Joe Biden and what we saw on that debate stage. And I just want to remind you guys how testy this interview was, like how pissed off Kamala was that a CNN anchor dared ask her very fair questions about the mental capabilities of Joe Biden and, again, what the world had saw on that debate stage. Take a look.
has described a panic inside the Democratic Party right now because of President Biden's performance in tonight's debate. He's been hearing from Democratic lawmakers and others around the country. Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
Listen, first of all, what we saw tonight is the president making a very clear contrast with Donald Trump on all of the issues that matter to the American people. Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people, on substance, on policy, on performance. Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong. And
but I'm sorry,
that
on
cannot
substance
be
and
debated.
policy and performance tonight, I mean, the president's performance tonight clearly was disappointing for his supporters. CNN is reporting Democratic lawmakers watching the debate were worried about the president's performance. One said it was a disaster. Another called it a train wreck. Those are Democrats especially worried that Biden did not punch back on Trump's lies.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the president of the United States has to be about substance. And the contrast is clear. Look at what happened during the course of the debate. Donald Trump lied over and over and over again, as he is wont to do. He would not disavow what happened on January 6th.
He was a very different person on the stage 4 years ago when you debated him. You must, I mean, that's certainly true, is it not?
Anderson, the point has to be performance in terms of what a president does. A president who incites an insurrection against the Capitol. No, but I got the point that you're making about a 1.5 hour debate tonight. I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in work that has been historic.
But
whether
is that
it be
the man who we saw on the stage tonight, is that the person you see in meetings every day?
The person that you saw on the debate stage that has, for the last 3.5 years, up until today, performed in a way that has been about, whether it be in the Oval Office, negotiating bipartisan deals, so that we have an infrastructure, a real infrastructure plan where we're putting trillions of dollars on the streets of America to upgrade our infrastructure. Whether it be the person I see in the Oval Office who is meeting with heads of the military and the intelligence community and in the Situation Room, ensuring the safety of America. The person I see in Joe Biden on the world stage, convening world leaders who often ask for his advice, most recently just during the G7 conference. So I'm not going to spend all night with you talking about the last 90 minutes when I've been watching the last 3.5 years of performance.
But this was a debate that your campaign wanted. You pushed for this debate at this moment. Obviously, I mean, you can't honestly say, I mean, can you say that you are not concerned at all having watched the president's performance tonight?
It was a slow start. That's obvious to everyone. I'm not going to debate that point.
Yeah, so apparently this really pissed off Kamala Harris behind the scenes, right? That is what has been revealed in this book from Jake Tapper, which is that Kamala Harris did not like the fact that Anderson Cooper had the cojones to actually ask a Democrat tough questions, right? To give a Democrat a tough interview, which again is certainly something that Kamala didn't get throughout all of her presidential campaign, especially from the liberal media propagandists, like, for example, Roland Martin and others who she paid for softball interviews. So yeah, she was really pissed at Anderson Cooper to the point where she apparently called him an MFer behind the scenes over him daring to challenge her and Joe Biden doing this interview. Take a look.
Relative to Vice President Kamala Harris, she has an interview with Anderson Cooper post-debate. You write about this in the book. By the way, I've got to do an eats, shoots, and leaves, if you remember the book, and the importance of punctuation. I've got to do an eats, shoots, and leaves analysis of one graph of your book, Alex, and it comes on page 290, and it's getting a lot of attention today. This MFer doesn't treat me like the damn Vice President of the United States, she said to colleagues. I thought we were better than that. I'm being real persnickety now, but there are not quotation marks around that in the book. Is that a direct quote from Kamala Harris about Anderson Cooper?
I will go back to my copy, but my understanding is that it is that she was incredibly frustrated with Anderson Cooper asking the same question over and over again. Which Anderson Cooper, this was the night of the debate. Anderson was like, "Have you ever seen him act that way behind the scenes?" Because if the Vice President of the United States had seen the president act that way on, behind the scenes as he acted on the debate stage and said nothing, I think it would have been incredibly indicting. But, Kamala Harris, I can tell you 100% was infuriated after that interview.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, why was Kamala Harris infuriated? Well, the reason why is because the expectation from the Democrat Party is that outlets like MSNBC and CNN are not going to actually do real journalism when it comes to interviewing Democrats, right? Kamala Harris was totally caught off guard by the fact that CNN decided to backstab the Democrat Party, right? They decided to actually do a little bit of journalism, which is rare for them to do when it came to interviewing Kamala Harris after that debate, right? And asking her tough questions about Joe Biden, okay? And it's really funny how entitled these people are, right? Apparently, Kamala Harris said that this MFer is not treating her like she's the vice president, which is a hilarious statement to me, considering how the fact that Kamala Harris hasn't said anything about how the media treats J.D. Vance, right? I mean, we've all watched and seen the media try to interview J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance destroys the media every single time, but they are hardball questions, right? They are hard interviews, and J.D. Vance just destroys them every single time. But, apparently, according to Kamala Harris, the media is not supposed to do that to the vice president, okay? What she actually really means is that the media is not supposed to do that to a Democrat. That's what she really means, right? Because it is expected that these mainstream liberal media outlets are going to push the Democrat Party narrative, push their propaganda, and be on their team, right? And, if you listen to these propagandists, they basically tell you that. Like, for example, Allison Camerata, who used to work at CNN, was actually confronted about the cover-up from the media. And basically what she said was that, well, we didn't really cover up what happened to Joe Biden. We just thought that it was Bidenism.
This I do want to talk about, and I know very well. I was on a show, the 2 to 4 p.m. on CNN throughout, I think, 2021, 22, and part of 2023. And 3 times a week, I don't think I'm exaggerating, we would take a Joe Biden live event. He would be doing a live event in front of some dilapidated bridge that the Infrastructure Act was going to help, or et cetera. And we took it start to finish. Okay.
Fair.
And so if there was a cover up, it was happening out in the open in real time. This was live, meaning undiluted, not unvarnished. We weren't the gatekeepers of what he was saying. We were taking a live shot. And here's what we saw. And I mean, my co-host Victor and I would sometimes joke about it and play this bingo game because we would know that at some point during this talk, Biden would stammer, Biden would have word finding difficulties, Biden would go off on a tangent many times, and Biden would tell an old story. Okay, so that was on our bingo card. And we would make light of it because we listened to it so much. So if anybody was interested in watching these Biden live events, they could have seen all of this, but we chalked it up, at least I did in my own head, to Bidenisms, because Biden, even as a young man and in middle age, was known to have Bidenisms. He often used malaprops. He put his foot in his mouth.
But this was different.
Well, my point is that it seemed to be a continuation or a downslide, okay, or a decline.
At no point did you think this is a man showing clear signs of cognitive decline?
During the debate.
Not until then.
Oh, well, I mean, cognitive decline. Yes.
A man who was clearly losing it in real time.
Well, I mean, let me just say this. I thought that it was the normal decline of age. I didn't think it was a crisis. I didn't think that he wasn't capable of making decisions. But when I saw the debate, it seemed like it was in a different category. The debate was in a different category than what I watched every day for 2.5 years.
So you have no regrets about not discussing the possibility, because Trump's first term, I was at CNN, and there was a lot of discussion about the 25th Amendment, that President Trump was losing his mind. So it's not as if CNN doesn't comment about such matters. They did for several years.
That's a good point. I think that was based on decision making. So that wasn't based on stammering and weird word finding difficulties. That was based on decision making, which seemed some of Donald Trump's tweets, and his decision making seemed out of the norm and peculiar. But I didn't see Joe Biden making decisions that was like, whoa, what was that about? What's he talking about? But he definitely had word finding difficulties, which we know is a sign of Alzheimer's and of decline. So did we watch that happening? Yes, we did. I mean, but a lot of people, he's had word finding difficulties for a long time, I guess is my point.
Wow. These people should be ashamed of themselves. Again, I know a lot of it is probably conscious, okay? Some of it probably is unconscious as well, too. But just listening to this lady talk, she basically says, well, when it comes to Biden, the reason why we didn't really press it that much is because we thought it was normal, right? It's just normal for Biden to, be showing signs of cognitive decline, right? That's just normal, okay? Nothing to worry about. This is why we didn't question it. But when confronted about Trump, and why is it that you decided to try to question Trump, even though Trump clearly is not cognitively declining, but CNN would ask those questions anyways. They didn't think it was out of bounds to cover it. She says, well, because Trump makes decisions that we just feel, are questionable, right? He makes questionable decisions, okay? And Biden has never made any questionable decisions. Like, I don't know, Afghanistan, right? Which I think was probably one of the most questionable decisions that Joe Biden ever made. And they definitely should have been asking questions about his decision-making ability after that. But, again, that is what the media does, right? They say, no, it's okay to attack Trump for this, but it wasn't okay to attack Joe Biden, right? And then they make up excuses for that, right? For why is it okay to attack Trump but not Biden? And this is why I'm not surprised that you now have Jake Tapper pulling a switcheroo here, right? In regards to the media's ability to now start to question Trump again. Because they know that due to the fact that they covered up what happened to Joe Biden, they don't have credibility. Now that they're coming out here and telling the truth about Joe Biden, now they're saying, well, it's important that we also tell the truth about Trump as well, too, right? So that moving forward, that no president can cover up their health or a mental decline or a physical decline, because now all of a sudden the media is concerned about getting it right? Getting it right in the moment when it's happening and not waiting until it doesn't matter anymore. Now they're concerned about this when it comes to President Trump being in office.
But to your point, this book goes beyond Joe Biden. There is a call in this country, in the United States, there is a need for legislation to mandate that American presidents provide all of their health information under threat of perjury, because we can't be lied to about this sort of thing. We can't have a group of unelected aides running the country if there's a 2 a.m. phone call. It needs to be the person that's elected. So this goes beyond Joe Biden. It should be relevant to Donald Trump and whoever comes after Donald Trump. I agree with that 100%.
There needs to be transparency by leaders when it comes to their health. And I would argue that some of the skepticism we've heard from Democrats, Republicans, and doctors, I have no idea what's true, what's not true. All I can say is that lack of confidence in the transparency that's being offered didn't come out of nowhere. And three, C, I'm really bad at that. And C, this applies to Donald Trump too, and every future president. Donald Trump has released nothing about his health.
Right.
And while there aren't the questions of acuity, there are certainly questions about his health.
Yeah.
And we can't have this as a country. We have such a powerful executive branch, and at this stage, such an unco-equal legislative branch, and such weak political parties. We're really racing towards a very dangerous situation. What if there had been that 2 a.m. phone call for Joe Biden?
I think readers' office can sometimes make this mistake, or audiences can sometimes make the mistake of assuming that reporting has the intention to advance a certain political project. And that's not the point of reporting. The point of reporting is to expose the truth and, tell history for posterity.
Yeah, so I hope you guys understand the switcheroo here, okay, from the media, people like Jake Tapper. They lost all their credibility because they covered up what happened to Joe Biden. Then they come out here and they tell the truth, and they make money off of the cover-up that they participated in order to gain back credibility. And now they want to turn around and use that credibility that they gained back, which in my eyes, they haven't gained back any credibility. And then they want to use that to go after Trump and say, well, listen, see, we told the truth about Biden. Now we got to talk about Trump. Now we got to talk about Trump's health records, right? You have Jake Tapper demanding President Trump release more of his health records. When, again, Jake Tapper didn't do that when Biden was actually in office, at least not until after the debate. Again, when it didn't matter anymore. Okay, when it actually really mattered, Jake Tapper refused to do it. And this is why I don't give the dude credit for what he's doing right now. This is why I actually think he's a bad person. He is a snake for what he's doing, because I can see clearly what the media is doing. They're trying to gain back the credibility to attack Trump, right? To make their attacks against Trump stick, okay? And that's what this is really all about, which again is why Jake Tapper deserves all the backlash that he's currently getting.
Why didn't Jake Tapper write this a year ago? Because he knows what would have happened. Somebody in the White House would have called up and said, Tapper, no one from CNN is going to get a seat at a press conference. There's not going to be any CNN interviews. So he backed down. And now, in a very cowardly fashion, now he comes out and he is blaming the White House cover-up. But what he doesn't tell us is the White House cover-up would have been impossible had not CNN, MSNBC, PBS, NBC, ABC, CBS all conspired with the White House staff to downplay, not just downplay Biden's cognitive decline, but attack people. Bottom line, they had more interest in protecting this left-wing administration who was using this waxen effigy of Joe Biden. And for someone's purposes, we don't know who was running the country, who was giving him the auto pin executive orders. We don't have no idea who those people are. We have a suspicion it was the Obama crowd. But nevertheless, they didn't care about that. They did not care about that. All they knew is that this was a left-wing agenda and it had to be preserved by any means necessary. And that included lying, covering up, and worst of all, demonizing and attacking people who sought to tell the truth about Joe Biden. And now he wants to say what? I have a little humility. I may or not. I sort of kind of was part of the cover-up, but now the real Jake Tapper is in this book who's now telling truth to power. No, you're telling truth to impotence. Joe Biden has got cancer. He's written off. He's in decline. The family is disgraced. It's easy now to write about that. It was hard and would require intellectual courage, moral fortitude to say this when he was the most powerful man in the world. And so, Jake Tapper, you failed that test, because this is one of the greatest acts of duplicity, moral duplicity I've seen in my entire life. And it joins a long list of collusion, capers, conspiracy, bogus, frauds, ruses. Jake Tapper, you should go back and see what was your position on Russian collusion. What was your position on Hunter laptop disinformation? What was your position on the Steele dossier? What was your position on the 51 intelligence authorities? And I think in every one of those cases, you failed the test of truth. And you really did this time in the greatest cover-up in the history, as I said, of the American presidency. And it's not over yet, because we're going to learn more and more tragically about Joe Biden's medical condition, and to see if not just whether the cognitive disabilities of Biden were cover-up, but whether his prostate metastasized cancer contributed to that, and that source was also covered up.
Yeah, so I think Victor Davis Hanson is 100% correct, okay? And I think that this story that has come out about Kamala Harris being upset with Anderson Cooper for actually giving her a tough interview is exactly what we're talking about when we say that, hey, yeah, the media was complicit in conspiring to cover up Biden's mental decline, because had they actually asked questions like they should have done, then they would have been shunned by the Democrat Party, right? They would have been attacked by the Democrats. As you guys, again, just saw, Kamala Harris was not happy with Anderson Cooper for giving her an actual real interview. And that's how the Democrats roll, right? That's how they roll. Because it's one big club in Washington, D.C., okay? When it comes to these so-called journalists, these Democrats and Republicans as well, too, to a certain extent, they're all in one club. And if you don't play along, okay, then you get kicked out of the club, right? You get disinvited to the parties, right? You can't be a part of the group, right? The elite group, okay? So that is essentially what happens. So Jake Tapper knew that had he actually really did journalism, at the time in which this actually really mattered, then he would have been shunned, right? The Democrat Party would have refused to come on his show, right? He would have had less guests, less inside information, and probably he would have been invited to less parties. And he didn't want that, right? He didn't want that type of stigma put on him from the Democrat Party in the mainstream liberal media. And this is why he chose not to say anything until it was too late, until it was time to try to grift and to try to make some money off of what happened, even though he participated in the cover-up. And now he's using that to take this perceived newfound credibility and to attack Trump. The problem with this is that CNN still has no credibility, and President Trump is not cognitively declining, right? He's not physically declining, not in the same way that Joe Biden was. And it's just not going to work, right? These demands, we need to see your health tests and stuff like that. That's not going to work with the Trump administration. And these people have zero leg to stand on, coming out here and now saying, hey, we need to see Trump's health information and blah, 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 blah. No, we don't want to hear anything from the people who covered up on behalf of the Democrat Party. So I can see through what's happening here, and I want you guys to better see through it as well, too. These people are just trying to, quote unquote, regain their credibility to then attack Trump. That's what they're doing. In this case, Jake Tapper is making money off of it as well, too, which, again, is why he's a snake. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.